I never imagined my life would narrow down to whispers, shadows, and the lingering taste of betrayal. My name is Nathan, though I sometimes feel like that's just a label I wear, like a mask to hide the quiet rage simmering beneath. People see a man in his 40s, respectable, careful, the kind of man who knows the weight of his words and the value of silence. But that's not the full story. Inside, there's a storm they'll never understand, a storm shaped by trust given too freely, by promises made in warmth and broken cold, deliberate ways. I work as a private investigator in Portland. I chose this life because I like peeling back the layers people hide behind. I like seeing the truths they think are invisible. Irony, then, that I could see every lie in my neighborhood, in my city, in my job, but not the ones curling through my own home. I have a daughter, Lily. Bright, careful, endlessly perceptive, with the kind of mind that notices patterns and connections before anyone else. My late wife, Sarah, would have adored her for it. I suppose I do, too, but sometimes, staring at Lily, I feel the sharp edge of fear that the world might chew her up and spit her out, just like it did to me. The apartment smells faintly of coffee and something sweeter, smoothies, her favorite. She makes them every morning, insisting on using fresh ingredients, carefully blending fruit and supplements like she's engineering her own elixir. It should feel normal, comforting. But there's a tension I carry now, an almost imperceptible alertness that creeps into my chest at the strangest times. Life has taught me that comfort is often a precursor to betrayal. And in my experience, betrayal is never casual. I spend evenings in my study surrounded by files, photographs, and the kind of notebooks that never leave my side. I write what I see, catalog what I hear, and try to keep my instincts sharp. I've learned to trust the patterns, to trust the small inconsistencies that most people dismiss. But trust, I've also learned, is a dangerous thing to give when your enemies are closer than you think. Or, worse, when your enemies wear the masks of family. At night, I replay memories like crime scenes in my mind. I see smiles, hear laughter, and then notice the fissures, the fleeting looks, the hesitations, the words unsaid. I am cautious by nature now. I am vigilant. And I am ready for the moment the world shows me its darker face again, because it always does. But tonight, as Lily laughs in the kitchen, humming softly to herself while blending a strawberry-banana concoction, I feel a shadow of unease I cannot shake. Something in the air is wrong, though I cannot name it. It's as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I sense, deep down, instinctively, that my life, my carefully structured life, is about to fracture in ways I can't yet imagine. The knock had been soft, deliberate, almost polite, but I knew instinctively it wasn't just a neighbor checking in. My pulse quickened as I opened the door. A man in a dark coat stood there, hat shadowing his face. He held a small envelope, the kind you'd never expect to contain something innocuous. "Detective Nathan," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "This is sensitive." I took the envelope, my fingers brushing his briefly. He turned and left before I could ask a single question. Inside, I found photographs, documents, and a folded note in careful handwriting. "Your smoothies contain arsenic. Check the rest before it's too late." I froze. The kitchen, the blender, Lily's laughter just hours ago, they became suddenly alien, threatening. My mind raced. Arsenic, poison. My daughter, my home, the life I had painstakingly built. It was all suddenly a chessboard, and someone had just revealed the first move. My eyes scanned the documents. Bank statements, property deeds, transfers. All of them pointed to one chilling conclusion: someone had been siphoning my finances, quietly, deliberately. Someone who knew me, knew my routines, knew what I would never suspect. And the handwriting, perfectly neat, unsettlingly familiar, it made my stomach drop. I felt a presence behind me before I realized it. Lily, holding the smoothie cup, peeking around the doorway with cautious curiosity. "Dad, is everything okay?" she asked, tilting her head. Her innocence was a blade in my chest, slicing through the shock and fear. I swallowed hard. "Lily, put that down," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I need to see something first." Her brow furrowed, confusion painting her features. But she obeyed. I spread the papers across the dining table, every document screaming betrayal. Bank accounts emptied, inheritance accounts rerouted. My late wife's trust, my savings, my life's work, someone had stolen it under my nose. I knew with terrifying certainty who it was. The familiar loops in the handwriting, the careful manipulation, it wasn't a stranger. It had to be family. and the thought struck me harder than any blow could. If Lily's favorite smoothies were now unsafe, if the home I thought was sacred was already infiltrated by treachery, then the people I trusted most weren't just careless, they were dangerous. Lily looked from the papers to me, worry in her eyes. "Dad, what does this mean?" I shook my head, trying to swallow the fear rising in my throat. "It means someone close to us has been lying to us. Someone we trusted." And in that instant, the world narrowed to a single, dark thought. Betrayal doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't announce itself. It waits, patient and silent, until it can strike at the heart of everything you hold dear. I spent the next few hours in silence, the documents spread like shards of glass across my dining table. Each one felt heavier than the last, each transaction a deliberate cut into my life. The knowledge that someone had been plotting, calculating, manipulating, someone I loved, made my hands tremble. I kept thinking of Lily's face, her trust in me, and how fragile it now seemed. Anger flared first, hot, consuming, almost enough to blind me. How could someone I called family betray me like this? How could they touch what was sacred, Sarah's memory, Lily's safety, my peace of mind, and think nothing of it? I paced the apartment, the walls pressing in, my thoughts spiraling. I wanted to scream, to tear things apart, to demand answers. But then a darker realization took root. Rage alone would not save me. Anger, as loud as it roared inside me, would not fix the stolen money, the tampered accounts, the betrayal threaded into every corner of my life. If I acted recklessly, if I let emotion dictate my moves, I would lose not just the battle but the war. And yet the fear gnawed at me. Every glance at Lily reminded me of her vulnerability. Every hum of the blender in the kitchen was a potential threat. Arsenic had been mentioned. Poison, a word I couldn't unhear. I imagined her sipping her smoothie, blissfully unaware, and a vision of devastation flashed through my mind. I clenched my fists until my knuckles burned. I had to wrestle with myself, fight the instinct to lash out, fight the urge to confront immediately, fight the despair that threatened to paralyze me. I thought about the life Sarah and I had built, the trust we had woven into every fiber of our family, and I realized that to protect what remained, I had to outthink the betrayal. Every instinct, every lesson from years of investigations, screamed patience, observation, strategy. But patience is lonely. Sitting in the shadows of my own home, watching Lily sleep that night, I felt the sting of isolation. I was surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. How had I failed to see it? How had I been so blind that someone could reach into my life and twist it, slowly, methodically, without me noticing until it was almost too late? I questioned myself endlessly. Was it hubris that kept me from seeing the cracks? Was it love that blinded me? Or was it something darker, my own complacency, my own denial of the possibility that evil could hide behind familiar faces? The questions offered no solace, only more weight. And yet, amidst the fear, anger, and self-recrimination, a single thought began to crystallize: I would not be a victim. I would not allow this betrayal to define me. I had lost trust, yes, but not my resolve. I had lost money, yes, but not my mind. And I had lost peace, but not my capacity for justice. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat in my study, the apartment dark except for the soft glow of my desk lamp, and I began to map everything out. Every detail, every transaction, every word, every glance, nothing could be left to chance. Betrayal was a meticulous business. Revenge, I realized, would have to be even more so. I started with what I knew: the documents. Every altered bank statement, every forged signature, every diverted inheritance was a breadcrumb leading me closer to the architect of my ruin. Whoever had done this had studied me, had studied my habits, my routines, my blind spots. That meant I had to do the same in return: study, observe, and wait. I made a list: names, dates, accounts, assets, every move they had made to infiltrate my life. Then I created scenarios: confront them and risk exposure, or remain hidden, gather information, and strike with precision. My instincts screamed the latter. Patience would be my weapon, intelligence my armor. Next, I had to protect Lily. I couldn't let her become collateral damage in a war she didn't understand. I installed cameras, discreet, hidden, and monitored who entered and left the apartment. Every visitor, every package, every casual conversation would be logged. The house had become my fortress, my eyes and ears a shield. But preparation isn't only about observation. It's about psychological positioning. I started tracking behavioral patterns, analyzing the handwriting, the subtle cues, The inconsistencies that hinted at guilt, a pause in conversation, a glance too long, a hesitation in speech, all of it became evidence. The person who had betrayed me had made one critical mistake, underestimating the patience and cunning of the betrayed. I also began assembling a network. Old contacts from my investigation days, people who owed favors or understood the calculus of deceit. Information brokers, accountants, legal experts, even a cybersecurity consultant. My web of preparation was spreading wider, slowly encircling the target without revealing my own hand. Every night, I ran scenarios in my mind. Confrontation sequences, deception tests, diversions, alibis. I mentally rehearsed dialogue, predicted reactions, calculated outcomes. It was exhausting but necessary. I had to be ready for every possibility, because one mistake could cost me everything: my home, my money, my daughter's safety. And through it all, the text from the unknown number haunted me. Your daughter knows more than you think. Choose wisely, Nathan. I couldn't ignore it. Lily's intelligence, once a source of pride, now became a potential vulnerability. Could she already suspect the betrayal? Could she already be drawn into the web I was weaving? The thought was chilling. By the time dawn broke, I had a plan, a careful, methodical blueprint of revenge. Not impulsive, not violent, calculated. Psychological, financial, and emotional precision. I knew that patience, timing, and manipulation would be my instruments. The architect of my suffering would not see it coming until it was too late. The first move had to be subtle, an opening strike that whispered rather than shouted. I couldn't afford exposure yet. Patience demanded precision. I began by manipulating the information streams, redirecting emails, creating small, controlled errors in the financial accounts I knew my betrayer monitored. The taste of this quiet power was intoxicating, like holding a snake and knowing it couldn't bite yet. I started with small psychological nudges, anonymous messages to their phone, carefully crafted rumors whispered to mutual acquaintances, just enough to sow doubt. A misdelivered invoice here, a hint of surveillance there. The betrayals they had committed against me had been stealthy, invisible. Mine would be visible only to the degree that they started to question themselves. Lily noticed the first signs. "Dad, why is Mom's trust account showing unusual activity?" she asked one evening, innocently holding her tablet. My heart clenched at the sight of her curiosity, but I kept my face calm. "It's nothing, honey," I said, my voice neutral. "Just some old accounts being cleaned up. Nothing to worry about." She accepted it, but I could see the sharp mind ticking behind her eyes. I knew she was learning, observing, perhaps more than I wanted her to. That made every step of the revenge more complicated, but also more thrilling. Teaching someone to navigate deception without them knowing they were learning, that was art. Next, I introduced small disruptions into their daily life. A subtle redirection of phone calls, delayed deliveries, forgotten meetings. Every minor inconvenience was calculated, a psychological breadcrumb that began to erode their confidence. I watched their reactions from afar, noting the frustration creeping into their emails, the tension in their voice during calls I intercepted. I also began feeding controlled information back to them. Hints, lies wrapped in truth, little signals designed to manipulate behavior. If they believed they were still in control, I could steer them exactly where I wanted. Every move became a chess piece, every reaction predictable. Yet even in this early stage, I felt the pull of doubt. Was I crossing a line? How far was too far? Revenge tastes like victory in imagination, but in reality it can be corrosive, eroding the very self you hope to preserve. I reminded myself of the betrayal, of the stolen inheritance, the poisoned trust, the financial ruin waiting in the wings. That focus silenced the lingering hesitation. By the end of the week, small cracks began to appear. Miscommunications that weren't mistakes. Frustrations that seemed minor but hinted at something deeper. I could feel the tension growing, the control I once thought lost slowly returning to me. And I knew with a thrill that was almost frightening that the real moves, the irreversible ones, were coming soon. By now, the subtle manipulations had begun to yield results. The person who had stolen from me, the one I had once called family, was unraveling, thread by thread, caught in a web of their own making. But subtlety alone would not be enough anymore. It was time to escalate, to force the confrontation that had been simmering under the surface. I arranged a meeting. Not in my home, not where I could be vulnerable, but in a neutral location, a small, private office I had secured for the evening. The lighting was dim, the room deliberately sparse, leaving no distractions, no witnesses. I wanted eyes locked, words measured, the raw truth exposed. When they arrived, I didn't rise to greet them. I let the tension settle first. The betrayal, the theft, the manipulation, all of it hung between us like a storm cloud. They looked at me, trying to gauge my mood, unaware that I already knew every detail of their recent movements. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I began, my voice quiet but cold, slicing through the silence. They shifted, uncomfortable. "Nathan, I interrupted, holding up the documents, the proof of every diverted dollar, every forged signature, every lie you've spun. You destroyed my life, my late wife's trust, my daughter's future, and you thought I wouldn't notice." The words hit harder than I expected. I had rehearsed this confrontation 1,000 times in my mind, but the real-life weight of saying them aloud, facing the person who had caused such damage, made my chest tighten. "You don't understand," they stammered. "It wasn't supposed to. It was complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, voice sharper now. "You call stealing, lying, poisoning complicated?" For the first time, I saw fear, not the controlled, polite anxiety they presented to the world, but the raw, knowing panic of someone who realizes they are trapped. Every misstep, every manipulated detail I had introduced, every subtle psychological nudge was now converging. They were beginning to see the chessboard I had built, and their panic was the checkmate moving in. Lily, standing just outside the door, watched silently, her presence a reminder of everything at stake. I felt a surge of protective rage. This confrontation was not just for me. It was for her, for Sarah's memory, for the life that had been stolen from us. Finally, I allowed a small, deliberate smile. "It's too late for apologies," I said. "You've already set the pieces. Now you'll see what it's like to be exposed, calculated, and outmaneuvered. Your every move has been anticipated, your every secret no longer yours to hide." Their face paled. The first cracks of understanding had formed, and I knew the moment of real reckoning had arrived. This was no longer about subtle nudges or minor disruptions. This was the unmasking, the unveiling of betrayal for all its gravity, leaving nothing hidden. The fallout was immediate, yet strangely quiet. The confrontation had stripped away the pretenses, exposing every lie, every theft, every manipulation. My betrayer sat there pale and trembling, no longer able to hide behind charm or excuses. But even as I felt a grim satisfaction, I realized that revenge, once executed, leaves its own scars. Lily was watching from the doorway, eyes wide, silent. I could see her processing everything, the deceit, the tension, the power I had wielded. Her expression was unreadable, but I sensed a new awareness settling in, a realization that the world was far more complicated than the innocent life she had known. My heart ached. Even as justice, or what I called justice, was served, the innocence I had hoped to protect had been touched. My phone buzzed again. The message was short, but it carried weight heavier than any words I had ever read. "You think it's over. You've seen only the surface." I stared at the screen, a chill running down my spine. There were consequences I hadn't anticipated, hidden layers I had yet to uncover. Revenge had revealed the betrayer, but it had also revealed the depths of the corruption, the cunning, and the shadows lurking in corners I had never noticed. In the days that followed, the stolen finances were partially recovered. Accounts were frozen, assets reclaimed, legal papers filed. But the emotional damage was irreversible. Trust, once fractured, cannot be fully repaired. Every family gathering, every casual conversation, every glance now carried an undercurrent of suspicion. I had won materially, yes, but the emotional landscape had been scorched. I found myself thinking constantly about the moral cost. Had I become like the person I sought to punish? My planning, my manipulation, my psychological games, they were all necessary, yes, but they left me hollow in ways I hadn't expected. Revenge is not a balm, it's a mirror, reflecting the darkness you carry within. Lily approached me one evening, holding her tablet. "Dad, I saw some of the things you did," she said softly. Her voice was calm, almost frighteningly composed for her age. "You were smart, but you scared them. And me too," I swallowed. "I did what I had to do," I replied, "to protect you. To protect what's ours." She nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Just don't forget. There's a line, Dad. Even when people hurt you." Her words struck me harder than any confrontation ever could. Revenge had consequences, and the most painful ones were the invisible scars it leaves behind. On the victim, the avenger, and even the innocent witnesses. I realized that while I had regained control over my life, the emotional and psychological terrain had shifted forever. The video froze me in place. Lily, smiling innocently as she sipped her smoothie, completely unaware but behind her, barely visible, a figure lingered in the shadows. My heart slammed against my ribs. All the planning, all the calculations, all the psychological maneuvers, they had prepared me for betrayal, for revenge, but not for this. Someone else was still in play, someone I hadn't seen coming. I spent the night watching the footage, analyzing every frame, tracing every subtle movement. Patterns emerged, faint but undeniable. A hand brushing against the counter, a reflection in the glass, a figure retreating when no one was looking. Whoever this was, they had been patient, meticulous, waiting for the opportune moment. The realization hit me my battle wasn't over. It was evolving. And yet, I also saw something else. Lily's intelligence, her intuition, her ability to notice the little things. It was a strength. I hadn't just been protecting her physically. I had been shaping her understanding of the world, teaching her that vigilance, patience, and clarity of mind were weapons in themselves. She would survive, even if the darkness never fully lifted. I took a deep breath, finally allowing myself to feel the exhaustion, the weight of every betrayal, every plot, every stolen dollar, every sleepless night. Revenge had given me satisfaction, yes, but it had also left me raw, hollow, and hyper-aware of the fragility of trust. I understood now that life wasn't about perfect victories. It was about navigating shadows, recognizing danger, and protecting what truly matters without losing yourself in the process. I called Lily into the study. "You need to know something," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Life isn't fair. People you trust may betray you. And sometimes the world will test you in ways that feel impossible. But you, your mind, your instincts, your heart, those are yours to keep, and you must use them carefully." She looked at me, her eyes wide, a mix of fear and understanding reflecting back. "I understand, Dad. I'll be careful but strong." I nodded, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't known in months. The storm wasn't gone. Shadows still lurked, and threats would always exist. But I had faced them, I had acted, and I had survived. I had learned that vengeance is a teacher, but the lessons are often harsh. And in the end, what mattered most wasn't the punishment I dealt, but the protection I ensured for the ones I loved, and the vigilance I carried forward. Life, I realized, was a series of betrayals and recoveries, of losses and lessons. The world could break you, test you, and even poison you, literally, metaphorically, but it couldn't take everything. Strength, cunning, patience, and love, these were the things that survived. These were the things worth holding on to. Moral reflection. True resolution is not the eradication of betrayal or the perfect execution of revenge, but the ability to survive, learn, and protect what is truly valuable. Darkness will always exist, but so will resilience, foresight, and love. Final cliffhanger. I turned off the video and locked it away, but deep down, I knew this story was far from over. Shadows linger, and someone out there was still watching, waiting for their moment. But this time, I would be ready.